Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and my guest today is Burlingame resident Jody Gelb. Jody is a mother, an actress, and she recently completed her first book titled She May Be Lying Down, But She May Be Very Happy, a micro-memoir of motherhood and mortality. Jody proves that no family history is too tragic for laughter, no loss, even the death of a child, too painful for celebration. And now my conversation with Jody Gelb. Jody, thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks for having me in.
I'd like you to share with our listeners a little bit about your background in acting. You're an actress or an actor, stage and screen, right?
I would say mostly stage.
Okay, but you had some screen, right?
Tiny little bit of TV, tiny bit.
Yeah, share it with us.
I have this memory from really long ago when I was really little, thinking something about wanting to be an actress. It was called actress then. Now we're saying actor.
Actors, yeah, and that's. I'm glad you said that because I was unsure.
I think it's because people say, "Listen, we don't say doctor and doctress. It's just the profession of being a doctor." So we've adapted that. And I remember thinking, "Oh no, I can't do that because all actresses kill themselves after 5 marriages, and that's a bad thing to do." But did some plays when I was a little girl, just at school, and then did a lot of stuff. I went to a high school that had an incredible theater department, and so I ended up doing lots of shows there, and getting big parts, and thinking that I wanted to really. As crazy as that business is, I thought, oh yeah, I want to do this. And so when I was applying to college, I applied half to regular BA programs and half to a Bachelor of Fine Arts, where you would do more of a drama school kind of program, and went to the theater school that they have at Boston University. Went there for 4 years, graduated in 1978, and headed back to New York, where I had grown up. We grew up in the middle of Manhattan, and 4 kids and 2 parents, and came back to New York to try to pursue this career in the theater, which was for me very, very slow. Took a long time to eventually, get into the kind of circle of working actors. I got into the union pretty quickly because I was very lucky. A friend had written a play, suggested me for this wonderful regional theater called Cincinnati Playhouse. So if you are from this area, an equivalent theater would be Berkeley Rep or ACT.
Boy. Yeah.
So I got my union card with that, and then just kept auditioning and trying to get roles, and working sometimes in a restaurant, sometimes in a chocolate shop. I mean, various jobs here and there.
You had the part-time gig to sustain you with money as you were going on.
Yes.
And how did your parents feel about all of this? Were they cool?
They were very supportive. I'm sure probably deep down they thought, ooh, that's kind of insane profession. But they also were a very... they had artistic souls in a way. My dad always played the piano. Yeah. We had music all the time because he was always playing Chopin. And my mother grew up with a mother that had gone to Oberlin Music Conservatory in about 1918. So she grew up with a lot of music in the family. And everybody loved going to theater and opera. And so they seemed outwardly supportive of it. And then they would come see me in whatever I was doing. So they were amazing about that.
When did the moment come when you thought, you landed the job where you said, okay, I can start making some money on this and I don't have to do waitressing, or I don't have to work in the chocolate shop? Did that ever happen?
I think probably it was, I finally got a contract to be in the ensemble of a Broadway show. Actually, no, it was the show before that, which was a first national tour. That's right. That was a very big deal. So a show had won a lot of Tonys on Broadway. It was called Big River. It was a musical version of the Huckleberry Finn story.
Oh, boy.
And so it was a big success. I don't know how many Tonys it won, but then the lead, this extraordinary man, Ron Richardson, who was playing Jim, the enslaved man in the story with Huck Finn, he wanted to do the first national tour because it's usually a big deal. And so I got in that and headed off with a group of people to, tour the United States with Big River. But the tour had not been planned, I think, properly. And we did not last that long, maybe 3 or 4 months. But that was a big deal job for me to get, I thought.
How long of a tour should it have been?
It should have gone at least a year.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what are some of the, what was some of the attendance at these at the plays that you did or the shows?
Well, every show is different, but if you're doing, a national tour like that, they're going to be mostly big houses.
Mm-hmm.
Could be 1,500 people, could be 2,000 people. It depends on the show, but roughly I would say 1,500, 2,000 people.
So if you were in musicals, then you were probably required to do some singing and some dancing, and were you comfortable with all that? I mean, that's something that you kind of grew up with then?
I didn't grow up with dancing. I felt very awkward every time I took a dance class, which then ended up not being very often, which was, sort of stupid not to just keep going with it. But I went in, a lot of people, you get typed in certain groups. So there are some people that do musicals that have the biggest, hugest, most extraordinary voices you've ever heard, and you have no idea, even though you've studied singing yourself, you think, I can't do that, I don't do that. And you admire that, and you look at it and think, oh, that's just beyond anything I've ever imagined for myself. So I was what was known actor who could sing. So my first love was acting in plays. But I could sing enough that I could audition for musicals. So I was really lucky that way. And I studied singing and, tried to advance myself in my singing. And but the couple times I had to do dance auditions, it was very painful in terms of feeling like such a fool.
Plus, you have to have the confidence, right? If you don't feel confident, it's going to feel that way.
Yeah, and they'll say, "Oh, don't worry about the dance audition. They're not really looking for dancers for this particular thing you're going up for." But still, you did have to go through
the process.
Yeah.
Can you tell us some of the plays that you were in?
Well, play on Broadway things. I was in the ensemble, and then, of course, when you're in ensemble, you always understudy somebody. That's how they do a lot of the understudying. So you're in the show 8 times a week, and if somebody's sick and somebody else is sick, you might move into this other part. I did a show that was a big deal for me, was the Who, the Who's Tommy, that rock opera had been, what's it called, adapted for the theater. And the world premiere of that was down in La Jolla, at La Jolla Playhouse, which is one of those great theaters like ACT or Berkeley Rep. And I didn't get that production. And for some reason, at the last second, because they did it in La Jolla, and then a couple months later, they were going to, they had the money to do it on Broadway. And for some reason, I don't know who had done it, my part in California, but at the last second, I got a call that I was starting work in a week for original Broadway company of that show, and that's a big deal for an actor because you're in the cast album, and all of those things that go along with it.
Is that like building credits or a resume or something?
Oh yeah,
like
all
that?
of it is. I mean, even the little off Broadway shows you do, every time you do one, it's like you go, yes, I have a new notch in my belt, and you go back,
right.
you retype your resume, get it printed up again, so you have another credit.
At that time, were you still getting service jobs on the outside to sustain your lifestyle?
Not at that point, because that Tommy was like nonstop work for a couple of years. And actually, I left the show. I was going to go back to it because we had a great pregnancy clause or whatever for our union, which is if you are pregnant, you have your baby, you're guaranteed to come back. If the show is still running.
That's terrific.
Your part is guaranteed. So that's, I was pregnant with Louisa during that time. And because of what happened with the birth, I did not go right back to work, and I was maybe 10 months later, I was thinking that I was going to go back, but then the show closed, so that didn't happen, but yeah.
When's the last time you acted?
The last job that I did was on a TV show called Dr. Death. And it's a show that was streamed on Peacock Network. So you could, turn on your Peacock channel and stream whatever.
Well, this
10
must
episodes.
have been fairly recent, right?
It was during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Deep in the pandemic, and the business had finally started up. Not theater. Theater was closed for much longer, but they started doing lots of COVID testing, and they opened up that part of the business. So everybody was tested all the time, and you kept your masks on until they said action. But I just, worked on that a couple days, and that's...
Okay, well, let me ask you this then.
Yeah.
You were living in Burlingame, right?
Yes.
Okay. How did you even know about that? Is there some kind of variety newspaper that you look it up?
There used to be a paper that we would all buy when we had analog stuff, which was called Backstage. But Backstage was mostly just theater. They wouldn't have any good jobs having to do with TV, let's say. Theater's good jobs too, but it's different in terms of the unions. So what happened was, because of COVID, everybody was auditioning with their iPhone. It's called a self-tape. So you tape yourself reading the scene. You send it in through this website. This particular audition, I was in my cousin's house in Connecticut. It's a long story. That part I won't go into. But that was actually a live audition, but through the computer. So I got into the website, clicked, and then this woman was right there saying, "Hi, nice to meet you." And then we read the scene together. And so that's how I booked that job.
Okay, and so where did you go for the work? Did you have to go to Los Angeles?
Well, I happened
to
be back east when I auditioned. I was about to leave and come back here, and my agent, I got an email from them saying, "Are you still in New York? Because you actually did book the job, so they want you to go to a fitting, tomorrow."
Right.
So it was quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
And it was very quick, and then I had to fly back maybe a month or so later to shoot another day.
Yeah.
So it's just a little TV job, but actually a lot of fun.
Well, I have here in my notes that you were in Wicked.
I've done a lot of Wickeds.
Yeah?
I was very, very lucky because I had a friend that I had worked with in Tommy many, many moons ago. And in Tommy, she had been in the ensemble. She was a brilliant dancer, and she was what's called a dance captain. Every show that has dancing has a dance captain that makes sure everybody is doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we were going to do a one-night Tommy reunion concert in a Broadway theater on a Monday night. Monday's usually dark. So I was in New York for a couple days of rehearsing the show to do this concert version. And this friend of mine, by then, for years, had been working with the director of Wicked as his assistant director. And she said, "Oh, Wicked's coming to San Francisco. You should audition for Madame Morrible." And I thought, yeah, sure. I mean, I don't think I'd even seen the show. I didn't like the idea that anybody was doing anything with The Wizard of Oz. So I was sort of late to Wicked, but I thought, oh, that's nice of her to say that, but that won't happen. That's okay. And then, for whatever reason, months went by, and eventually I had one audition on the stage of the Orpheum in San Francisco, and never heard a word for, 6 months. Not even, I thought maybe I'd have a callback, which is, your next audition. And out of the blue, months later, I had a message from the casting person in New York City to call him back. And he said, "We're very happy to offer you, when Patty Duke is finished with her contract, we would like you to take the role of Madame Morrible."
Terrific.
So, it was an incredible piece of luck for me.
Yeah. And was that long running for you then, or what?
Well, they had been running forever. There were 2 tours at that time. So this was one of the tours was just what we call a sit-down company in San Francisco for a long time. And my contract was probably an 8-month contract, and then it closed in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And then sometimes they like you, and sometimes they don't like you.
Right.
So they did like me, and so I did like 6 more contracts over many years with them.
But you're not acting anymore. You're not pursuing it?
I'm not pursuing it. I love it. I just don't know how to pursue it from Burlingame anymore because my agency, I think, finally closed their doors in New York because the business has been so bad because of what happened with COVID, and the theaters decided they had to close for years, which whether or not that was the best decision, we don't know. But I wondered how long are they going to hang on because it's a small agency. But I love that work, and I think, I'll do it again someday. We'll see. I'll take an acting class and just keep a toe in it or something.
That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you mind if we move to it's kind of a sensitive issue, I guess. It was sort of your teenage years?
Yeah, sure.
I think around 18 or 19, 17, 18 or 19. You were a cutter?
I don't like labels.
Okay.
I would never have said that because when that incident happened in my life, nobody had ever talked about it. Nobody knew it existed.
Was it just one incident?
It was one incident, and then maybe a year or two went by, and there was another incident, and maybe a year or two went by, and another incident. And basically, I think the way I have understood it was, for some reason, some people are more, they call them highly sensitive person. I like to think a highly reactive. Some people, when emotions hit them in a negative way, the emotions are sometimes so overwhelming that it is beyond anything that one can tolerate. And I don't know why that happened to me sometimes, but it did. And I don't know why. I just instinctively knew, and I did it very calmly and quietly. I went to my bathroom medicine cabinet, and it was the old days, so we had razor blades in little cases that you use to shave your legs or whatever.
The double-edged blades, yeah.
And I just thought, for some reason, I was just drawn to it. I took it out, and I just, slashed my thumb a bunch of times, which is, what can you say about that? It's so strange, but it came out of extreme angst and a feeling that you couldn't tolerate of misery. That don't ask me what it was. I think I was having a fight with my parents. Something had happened, and I, instead of lashing out, for some reason, people that do self-injure, it's you turn that rage or whatever it is, you turn it against yourself. I don't know why, and they say that there is some kind of mental relief by hurting yourself physically, and that's why people supposedly do it. I mean, I read about it a million years later, when all of a sudden it was something people did talk about, and I thought, oh, wait a second. I remember doing that maybe 3 times in my life.
Right. Did you have other friends that did it as well? Or was that something that anybody
never had heard of it.
Anything?
No, that's today. That's the modern world, which is when you hear, they're copycat people that do it. And it's a thing, and everybody knows about it. This was back in the probably mid to late, I don't know, mid 70s, and I'd never heard of it. Where did I get the idea? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But it just was extreme, maybe self-loathing at some level.
Was there a release for you after you did it? Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember that, but I remember reading years later something about the fact that seems to be why people they do it. It's something about the physically hurting themselves. It gets you out of your head, which is like a torture chamber of misery and thoughts and self-loathing or whatever it may be, and it gets you back into your body. Then for some reason that is helpful.
Yeah.
That's the writing that I came to about it.
Did you have to hide the cuts from your parents, like with a Band-Aid or anything?
No, it was so minor. It was my left thumb.
Yeah.
Nobody noticed.
Okay.
And that was the other thing. I think some people do it and then they're kind of emotionally blackmailing people by saying, "Look at me, I'm going to kill myself." No, I kept everything very secret, and nobody knew. Part of me wished somebody had noticed something, but that never happened. And since it happened once every couple of years, maybe 4 times,
Yeah.
that wasn't an issue, you know. Maybe you'd wear long sleeves for a couple days.
Right. Okay. We'll move off this subject in just a moment. I have 1 or 2 questions.
Sure.
So, are there certain signs that a parent should look for to see if their child might be cutting?
You know, I don't know.
Or self-inflicting, I guess?
I really don't know anything about that. I just know that it's become a thing with a lot of young people. I think more women than men.
Why? Why more women than
From
men?
what I've read, I know people like to say, there are the people that say there's no difference between men and women. No, there are lots of differences. We come out. Men are grown with testosterone. Women are grown with estrogen. I mean, there are huge differences in the way who commits the most violence and rape. Men. And then women. There are also things that women do that men don't do as ways of hurting other women. They may not punch a woman in the nose, but they may try to ruin her reputation, or they may do something behind her back. There are different ways that we cope, and for some reason, it seems to be, from what I've read, that more women have more of things like anxiety and depression. And is it because we're more empathetic, because we are the ones that bear the children? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I listen to a lot of, I read a lot of psychology stuff and listen to people that are, you know, psychologists. So those are some of the things that I've kind of gleaned over the years about the differences.
Okay, thank you. We'll move off this subject,
Sure.
but thank you for sharing that with us
Absolutely,
and sharing
sure.
that with me. I appreciate it. We're going to move into the book a little bit now.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to kind of move into the shallow end of the book.
Okay, I like that.
Meaning, I'm going to kind of come in with the lighter questions, and we'll get a little heavier as we move along.
Sure.
The book is She May Be Lying Down, but She May Be Very Happy. I love the title. How did you get the title?
For many years, I was working on these short pieces that I never thought ever that I was a kind of person who knew how or would ever want to write a book, but I kept writing these little pieces, and at some point I thought, oh, you know, maybe I could put it all together and it could be a book. And I started making a list of titles, and I had a working title for many years, which was Screaming into Towels. And then I thought, no, it's probably not going to be that. And basically, I came to this title because it's just the essence of Louise's life was this. And this was said by my husband when we were living at my parents' right after, 10 days after she was in the hospital for 10 days after her birth. And then when we picked her up, we just walked into my parents' apartment, and nobody said anything like, well, we're moving in, but that's what happened. We lived there for about 9 months, and they were incredible. And so, yes, I once was with her, and she was lying on the bed and maybe had some physical therapy, because we knew at this point she needed, for some reason, I didn't want to really know why, my baby was having physical therapy. Mm-hmm. And at some point, I think I remember feeling a little hysterical and saying to my husband, is she always going to be lying down? And I said it with an edge of, I can't take it. I'm going to freak out. What is happening to my baby? And my husband, who's now my former husband, and we're very, very close, he very calmly said in his beautiful Polish accent, she may be lying down, but she may be very happy. And I don't know, I never forgot that moment. That's what happened. She could never get off the floor. She couldn't do anything physically because of the brain damage. My husband, I've asked him years later, I said, do you remember saying that? Because it was so powerful for me to calm me down, and it just put some different frame on everything. And he doesn't remember saying it, because for him it was just came out, but for me it hit me very hard in the best, most wonderful way.
And you just absorbed that. You just it was in your memory. You just remembered that one.
Yep, very, very clearly.
Yeah, that's a great title. Yeah, I'm glad you shared. Thank you for that. How long's the book been out?
It was published on, I think, November 7th, 2023.
Great. So 6, 7 months, 8 months, something like terrific. Good. All right, you mentioned earlier when you were thinking about writing a book, you were kind of writing notes and things like that. Did you keep like a diary? Or
No,
explain the process to us.
Well, the writing, the only thing I'd written before, bad journals that I always gave up on. And when Louisa was first with us, and it was very, very scary because we didn't know, was she going to be okay? Was she damaged? We were in a very strange, scary netherland, and the only thing that kind of helped was writing in a laptop that my husband gave me and said, here, you can use this for a journal. And so I was doing journal writing in that probably for about a year and then stopped. When we moved to California, maybe in the early 2000s, we moved in 2000, and somewhere around 2001 or 2, this friend of mine who is a writer, said, maybe we should write something together. How would you describe arriving at the Bridge School in the wheelchair vans? Let's describe it. So I don't know why, but I started writing in the third person, and I gave myself a name. I said, Maddie drove up in the car and described the children in the parking lot, and that was the beginning of writing these nonfiction memoir pieces. And that was years of writing in the third person. And then eventually a teacher I'd briefly taken a 3-day workshop with said, you need to put it in the first person
Move
now.
to the first person,
Yep.
So you were doing this on your computer, but in bits, you didn't have a set time every day that you sat down and did this?
No, very
something?
undisciplined writer,
Yeah.
I would say, because I never thought of myself as a writer. I thought, look, I'm sneaking in this back door of writing. I feel compelled to describe things that we have gone through. Since Louisa was a baby, I remember thinking, I have to write about this piece, which actually opens the book, called Landing in Afghanistan. And it was written and inspired by this beautiful piece called Welcome to Holland, which a woman wrote about her life of what it was like to be told on the day of the baby's birth, your son has Down syndrome. And she wrote this beautiful metaphor of, it's like you think you're going to go to Italy, but you don't go to Italy, you go to Holland. They're different. It's a totally different thing. Yes, you were hoping for this, but basically your life will still be filled with beauty. It's just different. And that's the way she was describing, getting this news about having a baby with Down syndrome. And I remember thinking, because of all the fear and a lot of terror that we went through, I thought, I love that piece, but for me, I think I want to write my own version of that, which is, it was not Holland. It was more like landing in Afghanistan with bombs.
Wartime.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah. Life and death everywhere.
What would you say the main theme of the book was, and what were you hoping people would take away from it?
I am probably not a good person in terms of themes. I just thought I felt compelled to write these little pieces about Louisa, about some of the things in my life. And I don't know. I mean, our family grew up with there were a lot of weird secrets in my family that I grew up in, and then all the secrets kind of came out at some point, and people were living double lives in a way. And part of it, I think, was just trying to say life can be so complicated, and you can still make something beautiful out of all of this sorrow, joy, complication. Bad things happen, and what do we do now? And we had this amazing family and this beautiful life, and also had to deal with knowing that she was not going to live long, and what that was like. And I tried to write about that as well, because I know there are people. It's not why I wrote it, but there are people going through these things, and I got a lot of inspiration and strength from finding books when Louisa was a baby, I would go to Barnes & Noble and go into the special needs section, and I found amazing things there that really got me through bad times, and,
So, Jody, when it came time to actually put all your notes and things together, did you start to sit down and write it all out? I mean, did you have an editor helping you? Who was helping? Did you have outside help? I guess a consultant or anything?
No, what I did have was my dear friend who was my guide, and once in a while I would have a piece that I had written, and I would read it to him. He was the only person I read anything to, and he was very supportive, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I like yours much better than mine," because he was also writing about stuff about his kid, and he said, "Oh, no, your voice, very good voice," and I thought, and I'd say, "Well, what do I do with it?" He said, "Forget about it. Just keep writing. Just write something every day. Just don't." So that's like all he would say is just get back in your seat and write and keep writing. And then I took a workshop. I mean, basically, I just started collecting these little pieces, putting them together. I'd print them all out. I'd walk around my dining room table. I'd think, well, gee, let's start it with this. And then, I could go to here. And then I'll go here. And I'd change the order. And then I'd put them back together again. And I took a couple of weekend workshops with writers where I would read a little bit of from the book. Mm-hmm. And I got really positive feedback. So I thought, okay, I can keep going. And this kind of went on forever, where I would give up. I would think, I'm not going to do this anymore because I don't know how to write a book. I don't know how to finish it. I don't know anything about this. And then years would go by, and I'd think, oh, come on, you just heard that someone got something published. You're jealous, which means go back to it, do what you can, And I'd come back and I'd say, look, maybe you can finish this thing. Maybe with your level, whatever your level of skill is, try to create something with that. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. Just keep going. So what happened was I was in a workshop a few years ago for, 8 weeks, where once a week you'd get together with a bunch of writers, and there was a teacher, and she's an amazing, amazing writer of mostly nonfiction, named Megan Daum. Sometimes she's Daum or Daum. Mm-hmm. And so I did a Zoom workshop with her and about 7 other writers, and it was all nonfiction. So the idea was we would bring in our pages. You'd send them in to people through the internet the week before, if you were up that week, and everybody would discuss. So the point of me doing that workshop in my mind was, I'm going to say to them, look, I have this. I think it's done pretty much. Is this something? Is it in reality to think that I could get this published? And so I got very good feedback from people in the workshop, and then also from Megan. And she said, this is going to be published. She said, it's not going to be some mainstream big publisher, but this is going to be published. And once in a while, she'd call me and say, here, there's a contest here, nonfiction. Send it in if you want to. And then, I don't know when it was, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, she said a small publisher had called her and said, we're looking to do our next book. Is there a writer that you would recommend? Because they knew that she taught. So she said to me, I'm recommending your book. So here's their contact. Submit your manuscript to them if you want. So basically it was pretty much done by the time, because I kept editing myself, editing. I'd look at it. I'd change this a little. I'd change that a little. I'd take a couple pages out. But finally, when I got with Kelson Books, they put me with this amazing writer, Scott Parker, and he then was my final editor to get us before it was published. Yeah. And so it was called, line editing. So he'd say, no, you need a comma here, or, you know what, you mentioned this, and then 4 paragraphs later you say this, that's unclear. So we went back and forth for a few months, and then they said, now it's done. Let's talk about what do you want the cover to look like, because it's a very small publishing company,
Yeah, where are they out of?
they were, I think, both in Portland, and now one of them's in Portland and one of them's in Montana.
Terrific.
At Bozeman. So it's thanks to Megan Down that this whole thing happened, I would say.
Start to finish, when you first started taking the notes and writing things down, and you finally finished the book, how long was that time?
My story is it's about 22 years when I think of when I started writing these pieces.
Yeah.
It's about 22 years.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yep.
Yeah. Congratulations on that. That's terrific. So any thoughts of doing some more work, any more writing?
It's hard to imagine to have the goal of writing something to be published again, just because my process was so slow. And so I think I would like to write some more, but not necessarily with that goal in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. All right. We're going to move now from the shallow end to a little bit of a deeper end of the book.
Okay.
Nothing crazy, but just some stuff I thought we would talk about.
Okay.
But before that, can you feel like reading a passage from the book?
Yes. I was looking the other day because I had done a reading in New York, and, you want to pick the right thing. And
Of
I'm
course.
actually picking something different. This is a little, as the chapters are very, very short.
Oh, very short, yes.
And this is a bit longer. It's from a chapter called Bedtime, and it's right near the end of that little chapter.
Okay.
I checked the relic under the futon. It was a palm-sized metal picture frame with a tiny scrap of black cloth in the center, fabric from the garment of a saint, a gift from my mother's best friend. It had been given to us for Lou's protection when she was a baby, and it wasn't clear how things would turn out. Just a scary birth story. Everyone had them. Oh, my child was born with a cord around his neck. It was terrifying. And all their kids were fine. I loved these stories. So much hope. When it was clear that things were not going to be fine, I began hating these tales of faux woe. I wanted to scream at these women. But before the screaming, there had still been hope. We had taken Lou for the laying on of hands at St. John the Divine near Columbia University. We had had her blessed by the hugging saint, Amma, at a Universalist church on the Upper West Side. I loved the hope of miracles. Maybe there had been miracles that we didn't know about. Maybe her survival had been a miracle, or the fact that she could see. Some babies with brain damage lose their vision. It's called cortical blindness. Lou had the miracle of a joyful spirit. Despite her tiny frame and the increasing deformity of her spine, she was healthy. She ate by mouth. Everything blended smooth with a miniature food processor. Massive amounts of food. Bowls of roasted sweet potatoes with Irish butter that reminded Marek of the butter from Poland. Huge bowls of spaghetti bolognese and macaroni and cheese. Fresh blended California O. Henry peaches in summer. Sardines with cottage cheese was a favorite. Marek had discovered this option. He is a fish lover. Fresh fish, bottled fish, or fish from tins. He loves it all. I gagged from the sardine smell, but knew that it was brain and bone food for Louisa. And how had I found such a kind man to marry?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. How did you choose that passage for today?
I looked through the other day. I thought, I got to pick something for Mark.
Yep.
And I would start to read out loud and think, nope, no, that's too much. Nope. Oh no, don't read. And so I went through various things. For some reason, I found that little section at the end of that chapter, and I liked it because it had a light touch. It wasn't too hard. It wasn't too dark.
No, it felt good, actually.
So, thank you.
Yeah,
that
was great. Thank you. All right, so in 1994, and please help me if I've got things incorrect here, Louisa, her brain was damaged at birth. Is that correct?
That is what happened, yeah.
Yeah. What happened then? Take me through that a little bit.
Well, I had this great pregnancy, and I was always looking forward to...
You had a great pregnancy.
Oh, wonderful, yeah. I was doing Tommy 8 shows a week for about 5.5 months of the pregnancy, and then I had the last months where I was not working, and knew, but I'll take a couple months off and then I'll go back to work. For some reason, everything went bad. We were convinced by the doctor that it was time to check into the hospital, even though I was in kind of an early labor. But he said, you're going to be too tired. We've got to get this going. And then the next thing you know, they start to do some interventions, which normally are completely fine for people. There's no problem. But for whatever reason, she was deprived of oxygen, and it was clear all of a sudden. They could tell because you have monitors on your belly, and it was clear that her heart rate had basically stopped or was stopping, and so then they tried to wrench her out, I think with forceps. I don't know if that was the reason her brain was damaged or if it was before that happened, but she didn't get enough oxygen. And she came out, and apparently they had already called the emergency doctors from the the NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, because they had to instantly intubate her because she would have died. And before we knew it, in a few minutes, she was out of the room and taken to the NICU, and probably already soon after having seizures, which luckily I don't think I knew.
Jesus, boy.
Yeah. So we were left alone in a room, and terrified. My husband and I. It was beyond belief.
That was, I guess, 30 years ago, right? 1994, 2024, right?
That's coming up on it. Yes, yeah. It's hard to believe. In October. Yep.
Are things better today? When, you know what I mean? Could that have been prevented today?
They have all of the monitors on you. It's really unclear. Bad things happen, but it's so rare. So I would never tell anybody that was pregnant what I went through, and I would never have anybody read this book that was pregnant because it's so rare. Uh-huh. But then when I come here and, Louise is at Bridge School, well, the kid in the next room, he had a bad birth. He was brain damaged at birth. This one was brain damaged at birth. But it's very rare because they're all monitoring your the labor. So you don't know why did it happen? You don't know, but I didn't go there, which is why me? Why? No, that'll drive you insane. It was like something terrible happened.
Yeah.
Now what do we do? And how do we live?
Boy.
Yeah.
All right, Louisa, sweet name, Lueza.
That's
Louisa.
My mom's name.
That's your mom's name.
That was her name, and she was named that, and with that weird spelling because of her ancestor, Louisa Bergen. So we kind of think maybe it was just because they sounded it out, even though it's like, Louisa, like Louisa May Alcott.
Right.
We named her after my mother and my husband's mother, whose name was Maria Vanda, and so she was Louisa Vanda, and named after both our mothers, both born in 1931.
Yeah.
One in Warsaw, one in New Jersey. Very different lives, of course, because one went through the Second World War in Poland. And
real sweet name. And you nicknamed her Lulu, right? Is that what
she had a lot of she had a lot of nicknames for some reason.
Yeah. Okay.
Lulu, Lucia, Lubashek. Yeah.
So why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about, you grew up on the East Coast, you did everything on the East Coast, but now you landed in the West Coast. What brought you to the West Coast?
We magically discovered through, I can only call it synchronicity, of me being at a coffee house and finding a bit of the New York Times on a table, opening it up, and there was a review and description of this rock concert to benefit the Bridge School. And it had something to do with Neil Young. And I knew that Neil Young had a kid with cerebral palsy. I didn't know the story, but I thought, let me read this. I'm finally going to find out what Neil's story is. So they described the concert and the kids in wheelchairs on the stage, and I thought the way they described them was exactly like what, Louisa was living with. And went home, called information, got the Bridge School on the phone, and, started sending her reports to them. She supposedly at that time she had to be, I think, 6 years old to go there. So it was just, that's why we moved here, was for bridge school, because she got a spot. And we were very lucky. You know, the Board of Education of Burlingame, there was a meeting and they agreed, yes, this is her placement. This is the perfect placement for her. And that's why we got out here. That's why we came here.
Did you come out here like to meet with the Board of Education or to meet with the bridge school before Louisa even came out?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Get things set up.
Another amazing synchronistic thing was I got a job at the theater in San Francisco called American Conservatory Theater, ACT. And my husband and I figured out how to make that work, which was me leaving home to go live in San Francisco to do a play for 2 months. And the theater at that time was very flush. And so they paid for my helper nanny, this amazing woman, to come out with the kids. And it all timed out so that was Louisa's official visit to the school after they had all of her reports from, the Board of Education in New York and the therapists. It just timed out that they, when I was here working, then she had her visit. And then we found out probably maybe in early 2000 that, she got a spot.
Yeah. How many kids could the bridge school take at one time? It's
a very small school. It's on the campus of North School up in Hillsborough. And it was started by Peggy Young, Neil's, they eventually did divorce, but wife of many, many years. She started with another dad, another parent, for his kid. They created it, and they were from this area, and somehow they worked something out with the school district so that they could build their little campus on part of the land that North School has.
Yeah.
It's very small. It was 2 classrooms, and I think it still is. So maybe they can have 12 kids or 14 kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah.
All right. So what were some of the obstacles you faced raising a child with cerebral palsy?
Well, once you get past a certain point where you realize this is not going to disappear, she's not going to just have a limp, she's not going to be difficult to understand speaking. None of those things are going to happen. She's not going to be able to sit. She's not going to be able to walk. She won't be able to talk. All of these things, little by little, you give up and you go, oh, okay. And you finally realize where you are. But we were so lucky because Louisa was so happy. She didn't care about any of that. She was just, in the moment, we finally figured out what her yes and her no were, so we could ask her questions and try to figure out what she wanted either us to play on the television or what music she wanted. That was the biggest thing in the world because all of a sudden life opened up. But what I found hard was you think it's going to be a static situation. Like, okay, this happened. Now we're making our peace with the situation, and we're getting lots of support from therapists, and now we have this incredible school. But one of the really hard things is when you have brain damage that affects your muscle tone and gives you what's called spasticity and also some dystonia. So your body sometimes pushes. It's almost like you're doing calisthenics. Your muscles are very tight. That can lead to terrible things happening with the joints, with the hip joints, with the spine. And so all of it, you're faced, you realize, wait a second, this is just going to go and go and go. They want to do spine surgery. They want to do hip surgery. They want to do all these things, and you have to figure out what is going to be the best thing for your child. And we were so lucky because we ended up here. And so Stanford Children's Hospital, called Lucille Packard, was this amazing hospital that mostly Louisa was always there once she lost her health, which was maybe when she was about 13. She'd been pretty healthy until then. And then, you meet these incredible doctors and have these conversations, which is, how do I decide? And you figure out how you do decide. What's the quality of life issue? Is your child in pain? Are they not? Sometimes it's better to do nothing. It's that was a huge challenge, was figuring things out.
So Jody, with all of that going on, was there a financial burden attached to that? I mean, there's not something that you send into your insurance company, is it?
You could. I mean, a lot of if I had good, steady medical insurance for my family, which I did for most of the time. Everybody was covered under that through my union, through Actors Equity. And at a certain point, we realized that she was able to get, what is it called, Medi-Cal, because of her situation, of her kind of disability, how severe it was. And once we realized that was possible, she had Medi-Cal for whatever, for hospital visits, for all of that. But the state helps people. I mean, we had, approached a lawsuit back in New York because of what happened to her. So we were offered a settlement to avoid going to court, which, of course, we did not want to go to court. And the settlement was such that it would help for caregiving, which was the huge thing that you face.
Yeah.
So we had that for helping us, for caregivers for Louisa. But the state, we have lots of friends in this world, and the state also helps people out with many different programs so that they can keep working and that they can have in-home supportive services.
That's a real comfort to know, I think, for anybody that's got an issue like this.
It is.
There's opportunities out there for help.
Yep.
So, who did you go to for, it had to be very frustrating or upsetting or whatever. I'm not sure the words to use, but who did you go to for comfort and advice and consultation and venting besides your husband? I mean, we all have our mates that we sound off on. Did you have a close friend that you could speak to about this?
I'm trying to remember. I don't remember, because once you're in it, you're kind of okay. You've got it all not figured out, but you have the program. She has a school. She has her therapies, and life becomes, that's your normal life.
Right. Okay. Okay.
But I have very close friends, so I would talk to people on the phone. But I don't know. Did I need to do a lot of venting? I don't know. Once in a while, I'd, sob and cry about something.
Yeah.
If nobody was in the house, I would, just...
You have to have those moments, I think.
Yep.
It's just normal.
Yep.
How long was she at Bridge School? Because she eventually moved on to the Avalon Academy, right? Yeah.
She was at Bridge 4 years, and their mission is to hopefully get you back, like a bridge, to get you back into your home school district. So she was there 4 years, and they thought, we think it's time for her to go back into the regular public school, which we were alarmed, thinking, how's that going to work? But she was at Washington School.
Right here in Burlingame.
Yep, right in Burlingame for 2 years in some kind of special ed classroom. And she had an aide, which is normal when a kid is severely disabled to have an aide with them. And they made their best effort. Ultimately, it wasn't a great fit for Louisa. And by then, our friends, Lynette and Kinga had started Avalon. And then Louisa went to Avalon.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Was there an age thing where you had to leave Bridge, or could you stay Bridge for X amount of years?
I never knew what it was. I think it was more like they would realize, we think with support systems in place in your home school district, it really depended on the kids.
Yeah.
Some kids would stay longer, some kids would stay shorter.
Yeah.
And Avalon, I think part of their mission was, we are not going to transfer you into another district, or not another district, but you can have your kid here till he's 22, because 22 is the age, if you're in the school system and you're very disabled, you can be in the system till you're 22, and then you have to look for other ways of support,
right,
for like a day program for a young adult that has severe disabilities. Yeah.
Okay, so at age 16 and a half, you lost Louisa. She passed. How the heck did you survive that?
It's a strange thing in that I was, fearing and dreading this and knowing that, this is going to happen, because kids that can't sit upright unless they have side supports on their wheelchair, and the muscle tone is wacky and it doesn't work right. So a lot of these kids have terrible issues with their lungs because their swallowing is not strong and healthy. So little things that should not go down the trachea, the windpipe, go down the trachea. And these kids are very vulnerable for getting aspiration pneumonias. And we had seen a lot of children that had died in this little world that we were living in with kids with these disabilities. So I was just, we were all trying to do our best to get her to the right doctors and make sure that we were ahead of things that might happen. But, she did become very fragile and had a lot of health issues. And I remember talking to one of her pulmonologists at one point and saying, look, she's been sick off and on all fall. Please tell me, does this mean like she could die soon? What is your opinion on her prognosis right now? And because I was so upfront with her, like, just tell me, I don't want anything other than your opinion, medical opinion. And she said, well, kids like Louisa, they usually, what did she say? They usually go till about 21 and then their lungs poop out.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted somebody to give me
You wanted some sort of target, I guess.
Yep. And not that it means anything, but at least.
Yep.
And what happened is it happened in the middle of the night very suddenly. Nobody was prepared because you're never prepared. And basically you go into kind of a fugue state is all I can say. You just go into planning the funeral, and then all of those things you have to do.
For myself, that was a heartbreaking chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, wow, boy. Okay, boy, man. How's your life today, Jody?
I am very lucky to be healthy and to live in this beautiful part of Northern California, and my younger daughter, who I did not write, I wrote very, very tiny bit about her, and people say, why aren't you writing about Dora? Well,
right.
Because Dora is going to be telling her own stories, and I don't want to do that for her.
How old would Dora be today?
How she is 27.
27.
And she's a singer-songwriter. She grew up at those Bridge School concerts and thought, oh, you can do this.
Isn't that great?
And she was on tour with Billie Eilish, opening for Billie Eilish. She was opening last fall for a wonderful group called the 1975. She has an album coming out, an LP, in the fall. So her name is Dora Jar. She shortened her.
Would that be Jar like Jar?
Jar.
Wow, okay.
So it's kind of a play on words, Dora Jar. And she's amazing, and I've seen her in many venues, many arenas.
I bet you that thrills you.
Incredible. We went to Australia to see her open for Billy.
Oh my gosh.
And so she did Australia, New Zealand. So, yes, seeing her for the first time at the Madison Square Garden in New York City, where I grew up seeing people like Led Zeppelin, when I saw my daughter open, I thought, oh, my job here is done.
Is she live in California? She like Los Angeles or something?
She's in LA right now. Yeah,
good.
She was living in London for a while. She's got family in Poland, but right now she's in California.
What a thrill, huh?
Yes, it is a great thrill.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you still in contact with Bridge or Amazon? Not Amazon.
Avalon.
Avalon.
Yeah. Yes, I love. I see. They all came. Actually, I did an event at our Barnes and Noble. When was it? I don't know. About a month ago, and Lynette came, and she brought Kinga's son, and then the heads of Avalon came, and so yes, I'm in touch with them. I reached out about. I dropped off some of these books up at Bridge, so I'm in touch loosely with Bridge as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a wonderful community.
So where can one find your book if one is interested? I highly recommend it.
I know some people don't buy books on Amazon. They think it's better to support small bookstores, which I think is great. Mm-hmm. But from what I've heard, it's probably the easiest way to get the book is through Amazon. But I know there are other websites that sell books as well. Mm-hmm. So I think if you just Google my name And, well, that's probably the easiest.
Yeah.
It'll show up on Amazon.
Are folks able to follow you on Facebook, Instagram, or any kind of social media out
Yeah,
there?
I'm on, with my name, Jody Gelb, I'm on Instagram, and I'm on,
Do you have a
I know
Facebook
I
page?
shouldn't be on Twitter, but I'm still on Twitter, known as
okay.
X.
X, right.
I'm on Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's actually, it's nice for certain reasons that there's a big community of parents who have lost children that have been special needs, and I'm part of that community on Facebook, and also just to keep in touch with
I think
friends
it's
I've known
wonderful.
for decades.
Good
So,
for you.
Yeah. I
All right,
like it.
before we close it out, a little shout out to family and friends, if you like.
Yes.
Be my guest, your daughter.
My daughter, Dora Jar, yes.
Yeah. Are you seeing anybody right now?
I have been, yes, I have I hate to use the word partner, it sounds like a business, and I'm too old to say boyfriend, but I have a life partner, a
Great.
companion
Great.
of about, 7.5 years.
Yeah. Terrific.
Yep.
Glad
And
to
I'm
hear
very
it.
close with my ex-husband and his partner. We do holidays and birthdays together, and
Good.
so we're very, very lucky that
Yeah.
I have this extended family, and I also have extended family in Poland because of Dora and her dad.
Yeah.
So-
Boy. Jody, it was a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Mark. It's so great to be here.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Jody Gelb, Burlingame resident and author of She May Be Lying Down, but She May Be Very Happy, for being my guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby Lucchese for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, original music by Bray. You can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Tuesday, June 24th, 2024, at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.